This is day 4 of the November 91 7-day retreat at Springwater. I'll read first the notes that have been posted for me on the bulletin board or handed to me, and then what I wrote down from meetings. I want to say this. Sometimes a note or a question is not clear to me when it's just written down, so I may not be able to answer it without having asked a few further questions. What do you mean by this? What if people take advantage of you when you're so open and undefended? Is the body-mind with its intricate war machinery, thoughts, glands, muscles, overdeveloped for our day-to-day interaction? Aren't there some situations where it is useful? Concentration camps, difficult business dealings. How can one know when it's safe to have a choiceless awareness? What is this hunger for sex? I've been told that it dissipates when one has a cosmic consciousness. Well, it hasn't dissipated yet. After extensive sittings, 3 exclamation marks. I am disturbed by the privilege of money. Springwater's policy of giving a member precedence over a non-member so that a non-member may be bumped from a retreat, even though he or she applied before the member, particularly disturbs me. Is this a genuine concern, or am I disturbed because I am not one of the privileged? I'll respond to that, the first thing. What about acknowledging someone, showing gratitude to him or her? Is there a motive in that? What about receiving gratitude, acknowledgement for something one did? Does that create a feeling of separation? Having done the work was good in doing something together. The expression of thank you caused a feeling of separation. Can acknowledgement of someone as having done something good be used manipulatively? Waking up late in the morning, it was already light. The first thought that came was, oh, I overslept, I shouldn't have, I wanted to get up. Suddenly there was the realization that this self-related thinking was what kept away the clear seeing. Where does this intense self-hatred come from? I literally want to tear myself into shreds. First it was hatred of others, but now I realize it was all myself. I did go into therapy to express all this self-hatred, but it didn't help, except exhaust me. Where does all this come from? I am questioning my long-standing need to try to help people become aware of what they are doing. Is this wanting to be a teacher? Is it self-centered? Is there a motive underneath it? How does one deal with addiction? Sometimes as the mind gets quiet, remembrances are coming up like things one has done wrong in the past. What is one to do with this? I find that questioning this brings more and more thoughts. Just to quickly talk about Springwater's policy of giving members precedence over non-members. When this place was founded, not this place, we were first in a different place, rented place, which cost a lot of money to rent, to heat, and that was necessary to have some staff. And yet, there was a feeling in lots of us we wanted no membership. We recognized the dangers of in-group versus out-group type of thinking. I would have liked to have a place without any membership. And yet I was convinced by the people who were more business-minded than I was, and realistically so, that we needed a regular income to exist at all, to be able to pay rent, the reimbursements to staff and so forth, heating the building, running retreats. So we agreed to have this membership category where people agree to support this place regularly. And without this income from regularly supporting people, we could not operate the way we are operating. A member will, 3 weeks before a retreat starts, there is the deadline. By that time, no one has been accepted, so no one is getting bumped. By that time, people call in and find out whether they're in the retreat or they're not. And if somebody who has regularly supported the center has applied, that person will be given preference. After that date, whoever comes first will be in. It doesn't matter whether member or non-member. If people have ideas about how to bring regular support to this place, without this we're always welcoming it. And we always rediscuss things when someone brings it up. We will discuss this too. But it is not a question of accepting someone and then bumping them. No one is accepted until the date on which the decisions are made. And so far, everyone has been able to get into one retreat or another. Some of them are more popular and oversubscribed. Others are undersubscribed. Also, we do make provisions for people who cannot pay our relatively modest dues. It's less than $15 a month to pay less and still have this regularly supporting status. And we request that people who cannot pay that get in touch with the financial office, so some arrangements can be made. This question of intense self-hatred. The person who brought it up said the quieter the mind gets, more of this stuff comes up. And not just the thoughts, but this intense urge to do something. Tearing to shreds, and also reporting having done that in therapeutic situations, but there being no result from it except exhaustion, but not an ending of this. And interesting that it comes up, the quieter the mind gets, the less control there is. The day-to-day discursive mind has a lot of controls. First of all, by being busy with all kinds of things that are distracting from underlying, unfinished business, and also repressing. Repressive mechanisms are part of the equipment of this brain. What is too painful at one time or other in our life was shut off and out, so that remembrances of it do not enter the day-to-day business mind. May come up in dreams when there's less censorship, less control. Sometimes people report this too, that in a retreat, the dreams are getting more violent. So, again, we ask the same question, but let's ask it freshly. Is one interested in what is going on with this intense violence? As it comes up, as it manifests, the urge to tear, to kill, to do away with oneself or another or something. Can one watch it? Watch that as long as self-hating thoughts, which can be watched, can be heard, we speak to ourselves in silent language, in silent imagery, and remembrances can, as these keep running, these sentences, images, thoughts, remembrances, can it be discerned clearly that the body responds violently, wanting to get at it, get aggressive. Because the thoughts of self-hatred, self-judgment, down on oneself, against oneself, they incite the body to action as though a real enemy was there. By real enemy, I mean somebody who is about to attack one, or is attacking one. The body does not differentiate between thought-induced stimulation and real danger. It responds in the same way to a thought as it does to someone about to attack one, or a brick coming flying, a tree coming down. The adrenaline and whatever is needed to act, to run or to fight, or to paralyze, to become paralyzed. All of these responses the body comes up with. These are chemically induced responses, which in themselves elicit more imagery. Can that be looked at, felt, seen, heard, observed, without judgment? That's the crucial thing. Put aside all images, how peaceful I am, or what a good person I always have been or should be. Put it all aside and look at what's happening, without any sense of separation, that I should be different, or that I'm looking at it, just allowing that spectacle to be seen. There is no I or me to which this is happening. It is a running of thoughts, imagery, and memory with its accompanying physical manifestations, which urge for action, because a body full of chemicals for action wants to act. That's what the stuff is happening for. To run, to lash out, to do something with superhuman strength, because these kind of chemicals are circulating. And can it also be understood, seen, realized that in this process of thoughts, remembrances, and the violent reaction of the body, and more thoughts and more violent reaction. There is no solution through further thoughts about it, or further action about it, as the person reported and many people have told me. Because the violently lashing out against someone brings further consequences. Doing it in a therapist's office, is insight gained, or is there just a blind release of all this rage? I don't want to get into therapy, it's not my business. But the remembrances that feed into this moment are there this moment. It's not that something 20 years ago is happening. The remembrance that was laid down 20 years ago is active now. The past humiliations that every one of us has suffered. Because when a child is violently or forcefully told what to do and not to do, with anger, with threat of punishment, which happened to all of us, or maybe our brothers and sisters, that is remembered, but the remembrance is active now. And if there's a touch of humiliation one feels now, the past memories feed right into this now and act in terms of what was expressed. A wish for vengeance on another or on oneself, that has been learned too at one point. Not to attack the other, but to attack oneself. The other is too dangerous. The other can finish me off. Because usually for a little child, the other is much bigger. Bigger brother, bigger father, mother, teacher. And we're not trying to analyze all what happened in the past, but right now, the past is active. And what it is remembrances located in minute little chips in the brain cells. I'm calling it chips. How it exactly is, nobody knows. Physical deposits, sending out physical messages into physical reaction. And it's not happening anymore, the event. But it's remembered. What is it? As we came to this morning, going through this, it's phantom. Remembrance is phantom. It's the only reality it has is whatever it can trigger neurochemically in this body. That's its only reality. Can one see that? In this observation, which is not judgmental, not wanting to be rid or kill or be done with, but observe a phenomenon that is happening in human beings all over the world and makes it possible to attack each other or ourselves so viciously due to memory, active now, and observable now. If the thought is there, I have to go back, I have to unearth everything that happened in the past, it seems a hopeless task. But the past is occurring right this instant and is observable. As thoughts fueling this physical state, and the physical state fueling more thoughts. And then the thought, I shouldn't feel this way, is no solution. I'm justified this way, or I must be vowing not to feel this way anymore, or it's evil. These are just more thoughts. It's more of the same stuff, which brings no relief. It perpetuates this state, this mood, this depression, this rage. It's a different state of mind which is that of listening to it all, looking, in touchness, without judgment, without wanting a result, just illumining it all like the sun coming in and shining on everything. Green grass as well as garbage that is lying around. It's all illumined without judgment, without differentiation. And what is illumined is the power of thought and memory to incite this organism, alone or collectively, to violence. What are we without the thought of how we should be or shouldn't be, how we should be treated, or what we were told we are, or what we ourselves have made up that we are? Thought is doing that. There's no me. It's all the work of thought, programs, conditioning. This whole me, which seems so substantial because of all the realistic emotions, is empty. There's no self. There's only thoughts, inciting tremendous feelings and tensions, actions, which seem to lend that idea of self-reality. Can one listen quietly, or can there be quiet listening to the inner turmoil? And quiet, empty listening. Empty meaning no attitude toward it, no opposition to it, no resistance against it. Not seeking security in it. If I do this, then I'll be rid of it. One doesn't know. Not knowing is no separation. In that quiet listening, which does not exclude the sound of people moving, cloth on cloth, sound of wind, the breath, sensations of hands on the thighs, the cloth, the warmth, the light of the sun. It's all there. It's that same awareness, that same listening, seeing. Not wanting anything to be different, but what is there? What is it like? In that state of openness, the whole process calms down, dissipates. Because it's not fueled any longer through more thoughts, more remembrances. It's an amazing thing. One can be totally embroiled in something one moment, as though it was endless and going to last forever and have no solution, because on its own level there is no solution. In thought and acting out, there's no solution. It's a continuous thing. But in an open listening that doesn't know and doesn't fear to look, to listen to what's there, It doesn't resist or oppose. In that there's no continuity. It's empty and free, open. One is nothing in that. We don't have to be anything. We think we do. We were always told. And from that comes all our frustration, resentment, despair of not being what we think we should be. Or what others think we should be. If we hear someone say, I'm nothing, I don't need to be anything, does that bring fearful thoughts? People often tell me that. And yet sometimes it just works the other way. It seems such a relief. If no idea is connected with this word nothing, it just means not anything. But the idea nothing means, well, I don't have to explain it. We've been told all our life, be something, make something of yourself. Others have made something of themselves. What have you made of yourself? Oh, I've made something of myself, of my life. I've become something. But that I have to maintain and improve and advance and progress. There's a constant insecurity in this. Having become something or needing to become something more, or guarding that I remain what I have become, that someone else doesn't overtake me or do better than I do, because I've been compared all my life. Parents, sisters, brothers, teachers, clergy. Which doesn't mean one can't enjoy doing something for its own sake. Which little children do. We talked about in a group yesterday, watching a little boy in an airplane, a very little boy, put some blocks, some snap blocks together into an intricate construction. I was amazed because he's so tiny. Sometimes something would fall down and the mother, whom I couldn't see, was sitting next to him and picked up the block, put it on his tray, and he was trying to put that on top or on the side. Oh, I wondered, when will the mother praise him for what he's doing? But she didn't. When every block was gone, he pushed it together and started all over. He enjoyed what he was doing. Later I noticed the mother had 4 other children there. 3 more next to her and 1 or 2 in the front aisle, in the front row. So there was enough to do. Maybe she was that kind of mother who understood that a child who is so into what he is doing doesn't need to be praised. Doesn't need to be told he's doing good. But the moment we're told we're great, we're wonderful, we've done marvelous, then that's what we want to hear, and the thing that we're doing becomes secondary. The main importance now is to get attention, like someone yesterday said, all my life I've wanted attention. And we've unlearned, or it sort of got covered up, this joy doing something for the joy of doing it. The question, what's in it for me? Will I be acknowledged for it? Doing it in order to get acknowledgement. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging. The question came up and we discussed it quite at length in a group meeting. It's nice, somebody else says, it's a beautiful thing you did there, or built. And the joy of hearing it and then be done with it. But it can also be dividing. One person said, doing some volunteer work someplace, and then somebody comes and says, thank you. And she said, I felt we were all in this together. And now there's someone thanking me, and that sort of puts me apart. And the one who's thanking puts them also apart. The little child didn't feel he was a terrific builder. It was just fun. When do we start thinking we are something? Is that because we're told that all the time? You're good at this, you're not as good as your brother or sister, better than them. In school we're pointed out if we're good at something, given grades. All of this contributes to the seeming importance of being somebody, because with that comes this attention, which all of us, being starved for love and affection, take that in its stead. And it can also just become an addiction. It feels good to get attention, so one has to have more of it. More of this pleasure of feeling good, which is also chemically elicited through the thought, I'm good. Somebody telling me you're good, and that thought elicits some substances which make this body feel good. And then wanting to feel like that again, that's, I think, in all simplicity, the principle of addiction, the process of addiction. Someone asks us, how to deal with addiction? Can one watch it? Is one really interested? Or does it come to a point where satisfying the addiction becomes more important than watching it, watching the whole process? One may feel the watching interferes with having to have my fix. Then one watches that too and understands why one doesn't understand addiction. Because the urge to gratify blots out the giving attention to it. At that moment, there's just getting it, swallowing it, or inhaling, whatever one may be doing. And please, I'm not down on it. People ask these questions, so we go into it. I'm not judging it. One can't watch it properly if one judges it as bad. It's the same thing as with what we talked earlier about inner rage or anger, fear. Can it go unjudged, possibly unlabeled, so that there can be the freedom to look? If one is really thoroughly interested, because one sees the urgency of it, the importance of it, the danger in not looking and just keeping on going, with an ever more involving and maybe destructive habit, self-destructive habit. Not watching in order to get rid of it, but because it's there, beckoning to be looked at, felt, listened to, understood. directly, not through books reading about it, but reading oneself as the craving arises. What happens at the moment? Or what just happened at the moment the craving arose? Can one ask that question and look? Maybe it'll be interesting to find out what thoughts or remembrances or vague feelings about oneself or the situation arouse this insecurity or inner feeling of emptiness or discontent. It's all there to be seen if one is interested and sees the importance of it and the danger of ignoring. The question about sex can be approached in the same way. Why this overdrive for sex? Sex has its place in the life of human beings, the life of all living beings. Reproduction. And for non-human beings, there's a limited time in which stimulation is emitted and received, and the thing proceeds quite orderly. There are no posters or magazines to incite. Now, almost everything, well, not everything, there's other things we're incited to do, to be warlike, but sex really predominates the advertising and the movies. There's absolutely nothing that isn't spelled out anymore, but in a way to titillate the imagination and the whole body. I'm not condemning it, I'm looking at it. So, we human beings have this possibility to, through thought and imagination and fantasy, get this body going as though the real thing was taking place. Become sexually aroused or aroused to commit violence, to take substances to arouse good feelings. All of this through fantasy, remembrance of something that was satisfying or something that stimulates. Can one observe it? The active part that fantasy plays in all of our sexual arousals and drives. And where is the mind? Where is the mind? With the fantasy, elaborating it, and more feelings of arousal, more fantasy and more stimulation? Or is there looking at what is going on from a different plane? Not all caught up with it, but aware of the caught upness, aware of what's going on. That may spell the end of the stimulating times one has, because the fantasy is now observed, is not running its stimulating course. It has been interfered with through giving it attention, wondering about it, what it does, observing it, and being maybe just with this aroused organism, feeling it, rather than continuing with a fantasy to keep arousing it. Being with what has been set in motion, but no further fueling because there's attention now. Is one interested in this? Or is the drive for the pleasure so overwhelming that sort of feel the hell with attention? And I'm not advocating that one should be attentive every moment. It can become the new major compulsion of one's life. I can observe it when one gets hungry. And then fragrances of kasha or gravy wafting through this room. Is the mind, is the awareness with this feeling that we call hunger? Or is it with the fantasies of what one is going to eat and how much one is going to eat? Seeing oneself eating already. Or while eating, is there awareness of chewing, swallowing, salivating, the chewing, swallowing, and the flavor of it, the taste, the warmth of the plate in the hand and the fork in the other hand. Often sort of just forking around. Or is it just the thought, I have to have more? A thought feeling, sort of. I got to get more of this. We're not condemning it. We're just asking it and looking at it, bringing some light into all of this. It's interesting how one may not have started with one bite and the mind is already on the next one. So there's no awareness of this one. It's sort of just gulped down. Because of fantasy, imagination of the more. And if that comes into awareness, it can be just whatever is there really, beside the fantasy, the dish, the fork, the mouthful of potato, the swallowing, and maybe a gurgling feeling in the stomach. And when food is not there, can one just be with what one calls hunger? Explore it, feel it. The ability of thought to lend itself for the real thing, that is what we're all, that's our suffering and our pleasure. Our complications, which animals have to a very minimal degree. That's why they're there with what's there. There's not everything imagined what is going to come and what was. Although there's some learning in animals. I just recall now an experiment once was related to me. I also saw it on television. A rat was given the option of either pressing a lever for food or pressing a lever which stimulated a center in its brain, which was labeled the pleasure center, arousing pleasurable feelings in the animal. And the animal practically starved itself to death. It kept pressing the pleasure lever, not the food lever anymore. Because the reason experiments are made on rats is that it is felt they are so similar to human beings. There's a tremendous propensity in this brain to get to pleasure and to provide and keep providing pleasure. We usually talk about the remembrance of pain, but there's just as much, maybe more remembrance of pleasure in trying to get that back or keep it. And the addiction to that doesn't need to be taking any outward substances. Thoughts are probably our most addictive substance, eliciting chemicals in the body. So that being so, what is one to do with all of that? One person said, I came here to be quiet and I discover all the turbulence, agitation. Well, is one really discovering it? Or is one wishing it was gone so I could be in quietness? Then there is no directness, no in-touchness, which the quietness can afford one. It's a place for being in touch with inner turbulence and wind blowing in the eaves and doors and windows. Without judgment, without wanting it to be different. Not introducing conflict, which brings more agitation. And every one of us is in this together, one degree or another. The content of the thoughts and therefore the physical feelings may be different, but the processes are all the same. And quiet listening and seeing is not different for you or me. It's quiet listening. It's nothing, has no personal or personality tinges. It's free of personality. Quiet listening and looking and in touchness is unbound. Either it's there or it isn't there. And when it's there, it sheds light. Then is there just listening and looking, or wanting coming in, not wanting it this way, comparing to the image? Can that be seen as it happens, after it happened, whenever? And the banging, hammer on wood or whatever it is, the ticking of the radiator, the breathing. There's blood circulating, the heart is pumping. Cool air, warmth, light. It's all there. In this, there is no past. In this listening now, there's no time in that. It's a call.
We will end here for today.